Today we are facing some of the greatest challenges of our lives, from our health to political unrest, the environment, financial uncertainty, and the nation's racial divide. Welcome to Bill Myers Inspires. My idea for this show was to invite guests and get the conversation started, to take a deep dive into the issues that impact our world with an eye to exploring solutions. And we encourage our listeners to look within themselves to take decisive action to make a positive difference.
Welcome to Bill Myers Inspires. I am your host, Bill Myers. I am so excited for today's show. We have a fantastic guest. And as we continue our series of deep dives and hard looks into the topic of racism, we're excited to have with us today a remarkable and dynamic woman as our guest, Miss Sharon Leslie Morgan. But before we get into the conversation today, I would like to take a moment to pay our respects to another remarkable human being, a civil rights leader and activist that was laid to rest this week. I speak of none other than the iconic American statesman, the Honorable Congressman John Lewis. Congressman Lewis, in his final days, drafted an essay at the time he knew he was going to be leaving us. I heard this essay read by Morgan Freeman just yesterday, and I felt compelled to share a portion with you today as a way of setting the stage for today's discussion. And I quote, "You must also study and learn the lessons of history, because humanity has been involved in the soul-wrenching, existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes, though decades and centuries before us. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements stretching across the globe, because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate all the ways of peace. The way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring." When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. These are some of the final words from the Honorable Congressman John Lewis. May he forever rest in peace. At this time, I would like to introduce our guest for today. You know, as people love learning about their family tree via websites such as Ancestry.com, Black people in America face many hurdles in discovering their ancestry, as they were relegated to a status of property rather than as a human being. Poor record keeping and the systematic dismantling of the Black family unit for generations through the sale of Black people as valuable property, which resulted from America's institution of slavery. I lost my place. How, then, can Black people search for their ancestry? Founder of OurBlackAncestry.com, Sharon Leslie Morgan provides helpful information and guidance as to the challenges and meaningful steps and paths forward for Black people as they embark on the amazing journey of discovering their ancestry, who they are, and where they come from. Sharon Leslie Morgan is the founder of OurBlackAncestry.com, a website devoted to helping people appreciate and explore African American family history and culture. For more than 25 years, Sharon has been researching her family history in Lowndes County, Alabama, and Noxubee County, Mississippi. She is a member of several genealogical associations, including the National Genealogical Society, the African American Historical and Genealogical Society, and local societies in the geographic areas of her research. Professionally, Sharon is a marketing communications consultant, a pioneer in multicultural marketing. She is the founder of the National Black Public Relations Society, worked for a multitude of Fortune 100 companies, including Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and Walmart, and spent many years living abroad in the Caribbean, Europe, and Africa. Sharon's first book, My Daddy is a Cool Dude, was published in 1975 by the Dial Press and nominated for a prestigious Caldecott Medal for children's literature. She is also the co-author of Real Women Cook, Building Healthy Communities with Recipes that Stir the Soul. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my supreme pleasure to welcome to this show today my buddy, Miss Sharon Leslie Morgan.
I am laughing. You made me sound so good. It's like, wow.
Well, you got to do something in that life to amass all that narrative. You get around quite a bit.
Honey, and I'm at a point in my life where I've lived so long, it's like I can't even remember all the stuff I've done.
So, Sharon, I want to start this conversation with what was it? What was the origin or the starting place for you to become interested in tracing your genealogical roots? I'm tongue twisted today. Genealogical. I need to work on that. So, what inspired you to?
That word is really hard.
It is.
Yeah. So the thing that got me started was having a baby. So in 1969, I had my one and only child. And when he was born, it really brought to mind, where did we come from? Who do we belong to? And it really becoming a parent, as you will know, is really evokes a lot of emotion because you just really want to know, where'd you come from? Mm-hmm. And so that was the first thing. Then the next thing was I started doing research on my family because nobody ever talked about it, where we came from and who we were. And in questioning my father, I found out that my great-grandmother, who was actually alive when I was a child, he told me that she had been enslaved. So I was 3 when I met her, and I remember her. I remember seeing her, but of course I'm a little bitty kid, so I couldn't say anything. So when he told me her history, that she had been emancipated from slavery in Lowndes County, Alabama, it really hit me because it said to me that slavery was not so old that we can't remember, because it existed in my lifetime, because she existed in my lifetime. And then moving forward, I researched, asked a lot of questions, and realized that I have more than 24 ancestors, if not more, who were enslaved. And I eventually continued my research and have documented. My goal has been to document the names of the people who were enslaved, and it became a mission that I have continued throughout the rest of my life into establishing Our Black Ancestry to help other people do that.
Yeah. Wow. So it was by having a child that inspired you to look back and to see where do I come from?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But we all do. All human beings, I think, have an innate desire to know where we came from. And for Black people, that has been obscured because of slavery. Our families were torn apart. We have no idea who we're related to, really. When I look at my research and I see my great-great-grandparents, I see them alone, but I know they must have had brothers and sisters. They had mothers and fathers, but that's not apparent in the research.
Wow. So now, how do you navigate? What is that process? Because it would seem, it seems perfectly logical that at a certain point, a Black person going back and tracing their genealogy might hit that wall, which was slavery, when everything sort of went into a blender or something. So how do you navigate through that phase? That seems to me to be an intriguing point because of the wall that you hit. So how do you forge through that? I mean, what type of moves and what type of suggestions do you have, or steps did you take to move through that?
The first wall that you hit is the 1870 census, which is the first federal census to document
we seem to have lost a signal with Sharon, and we will be able to reconvene here in just a minute with her once we make contact once again. So we are here today discussing our Black ancestry with Sharon Leslie Morgan, who is the founder of Our Black Ancestry. So I think at this time what we will do is we will take a brief pause in order to reestablish our connection with Sharon. So you are listening to Bill Myers Inspires right here on the Inspired Choices Network. And we are going to take a break right now, and we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires here on the Inspired Choices Network. We're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. And now, let's get back to the conversation.
We're back. We're here with our special guest today, Sharon Leslie Morgan, who is talking to us today about OurBlackAncestry.com. And we were just discussing how we navigate through as Black people searching for their ancestry. And you were just telling me something about a bill or something that happened in 1870s, or could you start there again, Sharon?
Yes. The first federal census that recorded black people with surnames was in 1870. So what you do is you start there. You try to find your ancestor, and then you go back. In going back, you have to usually look for wills and deeds and other transactions from the slaveholders in order to find out whether or not where your ancestors are. So it is a daunting process, but it is possible. So it's important that we realize that you actually can do this, and some of it depends on luck, because if a slaveholder died before 1865, you won't find your ancestor there. So it is daunting, but it is possible.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's an incredible amount of research. So what tools are there in existence today that may assist black people in being able to uncover that? Of course, I know there's Ancestry.com, but again, I'm not quite sure how far back that goes, and so you're the expert, so you can let me know.
Well, there are two big possibilities. Ancestry.com is a subscription service, so you have to pay for it, and it's gotten progressively expensive over the years. So many people are not able to do that. Family Search, which is the Mormon Church website, is free. It's harder to negotiate in terms of searching, but it is a fabulous resource.
Okay.
They are even now engaged in an effort they have something called the Roar Project, which is reclaiming our African ancestors. And so they're going to load in 2021 a huge amount of data that will enable people to connect with their enslaved ancestors.
Wow. And this is
what is the name of it? There are many things because they've come online. We used to have to do this. When I started doing the research, I had to actually go to all the physical places in order to get the information. Now, much of this is online, but some of it is not. So it is important that you can start online, but eventually you will have to go to your home place, your home community, in order to research in the courthouse.
Yeah. Wow. So now, what was the name? The name of this not Ancestry, but the
it is Family
the organization
Search.
that's a more
FamilySearch.org.
FamilySearch.org. Okay. I want to make sure and get all these links and reference points after the show so that we can put them into the website so that everybody has access to these wonderful resources that you are naming. So when you go to when you're going in to look at records, you mentioned that you would have to go in and look at deeds, property deeds. Is that how slave transactions were recorded?
Well, the first thing you look at is wills, because people who were slaveholders, black people were property. So we are recorded in their wills often, where they're giving inheritances to their children. And they will say, I'm giving a plow to my son John. I'm giving the following slaves to my daughter Nancy. Okay? So that's one.
Okay.
And then you have to look at the whole record, not just a will, but there's a probate record that has an inventory of all of their possessions. So you will find a list of my slaves, and they will name however many people, and it will give them a value. So Tom is worth $1,000, Susie is worth $500. Okay, so that's one. Two is deeds, because when they transferred property or sold property, just like land, they would say, I am selling Mary to John Doe for $100. So the deeds are important too.
Wow. So now, how do you navigate the issue of name changes? That has perplexed me. The idea of the property and then the changing of names and all that. How do you track that type of activity?
That can be incredibly difficult because, as I said, in 1870, that is the first time we had public surnames. So what will happen is that black people could choose any name they wanted. It could be the person who owned them at that moment. It could be the first slaveholder. It could be the last slaveholder. It could be just a name that they liked. So you have a lot of names like General, Naval, something that appealed George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. I mean, any name that you wanted. So those are hard to suss through, but it just takes research to try to figure it out.
Wow. Yeah, that would seem pretty incredible. I have I'm engaged in a little bit of a project, so I am trying to find out about my great-grandfather. My grandfather, when I was coming up as a little guy, he would mention to me very little about his father, because apparently he left when he was about 4 years old, so he had not a lot of memory or experiences to share about his father. But he would just reference, when I would ask where his father was from, he would just say the British West Indies. Well, about 10 years ago, when I was president of the Indianapolis Downtown Optimist Club, I was contacted from an Optimist Club in Bridgetown, Barbados. And they were inquiring about me doing a jazz concert there as a fundraiser for their club. So we talked about that, and I agreed to it, and it was being sponsored by the United States Embassy. So I went over to Barbados, and I recall the very first day that I was there, we were going to a grocery store so that I could pick up a few items. And as we were walking along, I started giggling. And my host said, well, Bill, what's so funny? And I said, I feel like I'm in an entire country of people just like my grandfather. Because everyone greeted one another. It was eye contact. It was very cordial. My grandfather worked a room like nobody's business. He could have 400 or 500 people in there. And I'm telling you, he would make personal eye contact and greet all 400 people. He worked a room like it was a wonderful piece of choreography to watch him move, so swiftly through that. Well, it was several years ago, about 5 years ago, that I was with a cousin during Thanksgiving, and he pointed to a picture on the wall, and it was my great-grandfather. He said, do you know who that is? I said, yeah, that's great-granddad. He said, yeah. And I said, Granddad always spoke of him, but he spoke about the British West Indies. He never identified a specific place. Where in the world was that? And my cousin looked at me, and he said, Barbados. I said, what? I said, I was just in Barbados. And I recalled that statement that I made my first day there, that I felt like I was surrounded by a whole country of people just like my grandfather. So I've been in contact with some of the ministers in the Barbados government about going back and tracing my history to discover more about my family in Barbados. Now, apparently one of my sisters had told me that she had done an Ancestry.com sort of search or whatever, and she is suspecting that his name changed at the time that he came to the United States. And I'm not sure about that. But anyway, I just wanted to reflect on that because I am in the process of trying to discover my people in Barbados. And I would love to have any hints or tips that you might be able to offer. They assured me that their government has impeccable records that go back several hundred years. So I would only be looking at about 1900, 1910.
People do not realize that the way that slavery unfolded, there were groups of people who were brought directly to the Americas, the United States that we know now, and there were many, many people who had a side trip. So they were enslaved on the islands. So Barbados was a really big one, and I have an ancestor there. And they, as the English colonized the rest of the world, the Caribbean was the first place that they colonized. And as the Caribbean islands got exploited to a point where they couldn't take any more population, those people, the slaveholders, started moving to the Americas. So you have people who went to establish a plantation on Barbados, and then they would exhaust the land, and then they would come to America and continue enslavement. So there's a huge amount of information, and there is a database for the English colonies in the Caribbean. So you will be surprised. You might find a Myers in Barbados that you would be able to track back to the United States. Okay.
Well, when I spoke to one of the ministers of culture or something like that, he had said to me that when I said Myers, he said, "Oh, yes, we have that's a big.
I found
that's a big
names
family.
in my family which are not as popular in the United States. I lived in Jamaica, and it's like they were really popular in Jamaica. So my family names were Nicholson and Leslie. And it's like, wow, there's not a lot of us here for black people. But in Jamaica, those names are very common.
Wow. Yeah, I'm very curious. With a population of only a couple 100,000 people in Barbados, I'm reasonably confident that I was probably speaking to several relatives when I was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely possible.
Wow.
And that's part of what we don't understand. I mean, this is a worldwide, our diaspora is very large, and we do not understand the connections that we have. Even when you go back to Africa, you do not understand how connected you might be.
Wow. You know, there was a when I was in Barbados, I went there 2 years in a row. The first year I was, of course, there to do the concert. The second year I was there was to do a concert as well, but I was there for about 2 weeks as opposed to about 4 days. And during that time, I asked my host if I could go see, what Barbados really looked like. Get me out of the tourism side of this thing. I want to see the other side. I want to see the other part. And so we took a tour to the other side of the island. The Caribbean Ocean side, of course, is very serene and beautiful, postcard like experience. But then we went to the
Atlantic side.
we went to the Atlantic side, exactly. And I'm telling you, the ocean was violent. It was about 20 degrees cooler, and I mean these waves and stuff were just crashing and smashing into the rocks and that sort of thing. And I thought about that, and I thought, wow, this is what the people coming off of these, ships, this is what they experienced. This was the welcome side that they saw. And many of those slave trails and stuff are still there. And ironically, a lot of the plantations that were sugarcane and that sort of thing, you driving through some of those little roads, you'd hear this truck coming around the bend, and there's 3 or 4, black guys on the back of a pickup truck that's wheeling around the corner that is stuffed with sugar cane, and they're holding machetes. They are still doing the very same work. now.
Yes,
And
that is true.
That was a moonwalk back for me because I was like stunned because all of a sudden I felt like I was really back 100, 200 years or so. Very startling.
When you leave Bridgetown, the capital, and you go out into the country parts, it's a whole different picture because the past is present.
Absolutely. And yeah, it was, and that was again, it was just totally awesome to experience and see the other side. Whenever I go somewhere, I don't want to go to McDonald's in Paris. You know what I mean? It's like, why would I do that?
No kidding.
Exactly.
Why would you do that?
Right.
You want to go to Barbados and eat flying fish and,
exactly.
yeah.
So I want to experience, I want to see how folks live, and I want to actually get something from that as opposed to the Americanized version of that experience that's being shoved down my throat that I don't want. That's why I traveled and got a passport. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you're not a tourist. You're a whole different, thing. Because everywhere I've been, I've lived many places around the world, and I often thought I am working the slave route in reverse. So I was born and raised in Chicago, and when the government gave me a passport, it was like, whoa, the world is my oyster. And I first went to Jamaica, where I lived for 5 years, which was incredibly enlightening, just like Barbados is. And then I went to South Africa, and then I went to France. And in Jamaica, I gained this huge understanding about how slavery worked. And like I said, I found my family names there, and it was amazing. And I went to South Africa, and I had a similar experience reconnecting with my ancestry in Africa and being able to see how the history was so much the same. And then that made me curious about the Europeans who enslaved us. And I went to France, and it's like, whoa, okay. So, it is not, it's a very big picture. It is very hard to digest. But we really need to do that in order to make ourselves better people and to understand when you know where you come from, you know where you can go.
Right, exactly. And on that note, we're going to take a brief pause for the cause. You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires right here on the Inspired Choices Network. Hang in there. We'll be right back.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
You're listening to Bill Myers Inspires here on the Inspired Choices Network. We're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. And now, let's get back to the conversation.
We're back with our special guest today, Miss Sharon Leslie Morgan. Sharon, it is indeed a treat to have you on here chopping it up for a while. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Somebody's glad to hear me chopping it up.
Well, and I look forward to, of course, next week when we have the two of you, Thomas Norman DeWolf, and yourself, sharing the space and sharing with us your experiences of gathering at the table, which I'm so looking forward to. So but I do want to ask you about something else right now. I want to ask you about your thoughts about what's going on right now in this here place. We are dealing with a pandemic. We are dealing with political chaos, mayhem. We are dealing with Black Lives Matter. Tom described it as the perfect storm, and I thought that was interesting. So I want to ask you, where are we now? What are your thoughts about what you see going on in our society currently and around the world, quite frankly, because I think that it has resonated in many other places around the world. So.
That is a really provocative question. And I have to resist spewing expletives to describe how I feel. We are living in a time, I believe, of great change. As we have witnessed John Lewis being laid to rest, the message of his life was getting into good trouble, which means doing things that will change the paradigm. We have a system that has made it normal to disenfranchise people. And I am so proud to see young people, old people, white people, black people, everybody getting into the streets and resisting. Because what we need is a change of paradigm. If we are ever going to solve the problem of race, it has to be everybody at the wheel trying to make change. And that will require getting into good trouble. So going to jail, resisting in any way possible, and most of all at this moment is getting your ass out on November 2nd to vote.
Yeah.
Because that is our democratic right, and even though the Voting Rights Act has been suspended, and even though voter suppression has become the thing for the Bulgarian regime to do, we have to resist that, and we have to vote, and we have to make our voices heard.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm certainly hoping that just as we all try to figure out from where we stand, what and how we may contribute to making that change, I am pleased and excited to be able to use this platform to perhaps take a look into some of the things that we have been plagued with since the beginning of the nation, which is the race issue. And so I am grateful to have this platform and this opportunity to be able to have these very powerful and direct conversations with people such as yourself and Thomas Norman DeWolf. I want to share some good news with you. This last week, and I would like to share this with all the listeners, and I should start by saying thank you. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in to listen to this show. This is my third show. So after I had completed my second show, I was informed by the network that I was selected as the featured host of the week. So I thank you, Inspired Choices, for that that acknowledgement. It means a lot. It's certainly encouraging moving forward. And I just want to say thank you to the network, and thank you to all of the listeners out there, and thank you to my wonderful guests who are definitely making this conversation lively and making it happen. So thank you all.
Yeah, y'all. Bill, you are a incredibly conscious and devoted person, and I am so happy to see you on this platform. You live a life. I know you. I knew your daddy, and I know you to be a person of such incredible moral fortitude that you are doing really great things, and I really want to see this go on. And I'm going to shout out to Vivi right now, your beloved wife, because y'all are a great team, and you know you're making changes that are really good in the world.
Well, thank you so much. We just doing what we got to do, you know, trying to.
And we all have to put our shoulders to the wheel.
Yes.
You know, because we are responsible for our fate. We are responsible for making the world that we want to live in. We are responsible for being the change that you want to see in the world. So you are doing that, and I'm very proud of you.
Thank you so much.
You know, and hey, here's a new platform to make it happen.
Right. Well, like I say, I'm very grateful. Everything has sort of just magically moved into place, and so I'm grateful for all of the hands on deck. There's a whole lot of shoulders put to this wheel just to get this.
Is that magic, or is that the ancestors stepping in to make sure that everything is all right?
You know, I believe that the latter is absolutely true. Is absolutely true. This is definitely divinely guided. Let me say that. And I am curious to know, as we talk about, you mentioned the statement, very famous quote there, "Be the change that you seek." I want you to sort of drill into that for a second, because I think sometimes we sort of bumper stickerize and trivialize statements like that. And I would like for you to take a moment and just take a stab at what that statement actually means, to be the change that you seek.
What it says to me is, I decided a very long time ago that if I am not happy with something that is going on in the world, I can have influence over that. I can resist, I can comment, I can do something. And I have consistently done that. When we talk about genealogy, I have made a place with our Black Ancestry where we can actually look for and hopefully find our ancestors. And that makes a change in how a person feels about themselves. And I am not content to sit back and just watch things unfold. I vote. I am active in my community. I am active in teaching my grandchildren about our past and what it means to be a good citizen and what it means to make a difference. You cannot just stand silent, because silence is complicity. If you stand silent when something horrible is happening, you are complicit. It's like in Nazi Germany. Everybody said, "Oh, no, I didn't do anything." No, they did nothing, and that helped propel it. So we have to stand strong, exercise your beliefs, and don't let people get away with, don't be silent. You know, you have to speak. You have to, you have to do something.
Yeah. Well, that's so very important. My grandfather, one of the things that he sort of pounded into my head, it was a mantra of sorts, was always stating to me the importance of being a good steward of your community. A good steward of your community.
Yeah, your dad. Your dad was the same guy.
Yeah, exactly. 54 years on the police department, serving the community.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, but the beautiful thing about that is it immediately takes the focus off of you being worried about you. You know what I mean? Because it's all about how are you serving another? How are you in service to another? How are you assisting another on their journey? And so that seems to be very important. The greatest thrill in the world for me is not at all speaking about myself, but being able to speak about someone else. Being able to lift them up actually makes my heart smile every time I'm able to do that.
Because we live in this world together. You don't live here alone. It's like it's not your earth. It's everybody's. And you cannot be so absorbed in yourself that you don't think about the other person. What about the homeless guy? What about, somebody who is struggling a woman who's struggling to raise her children? And we are in this together. It is a community. And you have to think of it in that way. We would never have survived slavery if that had not happened. We have these incredibly strong shoulders to stand upon, where people had a sense of community, a sense of wrong and right, a sense of there can be a better day, and we really need to get back to that. Because we, American people, having lived all over the world, I'm going to say this, American people have become so selfish and so self-absorbed that they do not have any idea of what it means to share and to be empathetic and to be compassionate, because they're only thinking about themselves. We cannot exist if we don't join together and make and support community. And I'm sorry to be on my soapbox.
No.
That's incredibly important to me, because we don't live here alone. We live here with others. We have to love, appreciate, and really extend ourselves sometimes to help that community be strong and productive and, and conscious.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to visit that story that I shared with you earlier about my time in Barbados. It was another episode when I was going with a host to the store again, but we were at a store and we could not figure out where in the world the front door was. And so we were walking around this building and walking around it. You could see a parking lot. I mean, it was stuffed, so you knew people were there. It was just, why didn't they make it easier to get inside? But as we were walking back and forth trying to figure it out, we walked past a group of 3 gentlemen that were sitting on the curb enjoying a brown bag, passing it back and forth and laughing and cutting up and having a great time.
And there was some rum in that bag, right?
I'm sure it was. I'm sure there's some magic juju in there. So as we walked by them the second time, I heard, "Hey!" And I turned around and one of them had stood up. And he said, he chastised us for how incredibly rude it was for us to walk by them without acknowledging them and speaking to them, and how that was just unacceptable. For about 10 minutes, got a pretty serious tongue lashing, because there, culturally, it is completely unacceptable and rude beyond measure to walk by another human being and not make eye contact with them and greet them. And what is so ironic to me is how we walk through America day after day, grocery store, convenience store, you name it, and people literally cut their eyes away from you. Or you intentionally act like you don't see each other, like you just sort of these invisible spirits sort of passing, when in fact I see you. And it really hit me strong when I came back to the States after that, because I was able to do a direct comparison of how humanity shows up and how our attitudes toward one another and what we have created as acceptable or normal behavior that is completely abnormal. You know what I mean? How we've created this whole other paradigm, as you say, that is out of touch with humanity itself. I
live in a tiny little town in central eastern Mississippi. I grew up in Chicago. When I moved here 2 years ago, it was shocking to me. Everybody waves at you. Everybody acknowledges your presence. Everybody, when you go to the grocery store, is like, hey. And that is a lovely thing, because it's like, wow, these people don't know me. They don't I'm in my Chicago mode where it's like, I'm not having I just didn't appreciate that. And I saw them do that, and it's like, wow. And I love it, because it is an expression of community. It is acknowledging your humanity. It is respecting you as a person. It is like really an awesome thing to have happen. And I am so glad I am here now, amongst the cotton fields and all the other historical harm that happened. There are such good things that we have to get back to.
Wow. So has it grounded you? Is that the word? I mean, has moving back to Mississippi and the time you're there, has that felt like a grounding experience for you? A reconnection?
Yeah. As long as I don't have to pick cotton, I'm good.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I hear you. It's so amazing. I was talking to some musician buddies of mine in Muscle Shoals, and they were expressing that their feeling about racism in the Muscle Shoals music scene and that sort of thing, and their openness and understanding of sort of the experience that black people had down there, because they said, well, we worked right alongside them. My people, they were also cotton picking folk and everything else. That was all the work that there was, So, Sharon, it has been a joy and a pleasure having you here today, and I so look forward to next week when we can chop it up some more.
My dear, here we go.
Yeah. So, you have been listening to Bill Myers Inspires right here on the Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Bill Myers, and we've enjoyed this conversation today with our special guest, Miss Sharon Leslie Morgan. And she will be returning with us next week and joining Thomas Norman DeWolf. And they will discuss a book that they co-wrote, an experience that they co-walked, called Gathering at the Table. And we so look forward to the continuation of this discussion as we move towards healing and understanding in our next episode. So, Sharon, once again, it's been a delight having you with us, my dear.
Thank you, Boo.
All right. So now we thank you for tuning in to us today. Sorry, we had a couple of little technical glitches today, but we're still here, and we're glad that you're here with us. We look forward to you joining us next week, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending your afternoon right here with us at Bill Myers Inspires. Remember, we're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Inspired Choices Network. Remember to take time this week to take a breath and look within yourself and figure out how you can make a positive difference in this world. Spread the word, and we'll see you here next Friday.